edge-show.com. Edge-show.com. The hyphen is stupid. Edge-show.com.
This is The Edge with Mark Thompson.
A mobster is on the show today from the Chicago mob, the mafia, that then moved to Las Vegas and took over in the 70s. Frank Culotta is his name. He was the technical consultant to Martin Scorsese on the movie Casino, and his character is in the movie Casino. The life was pretty brutal, and he'll give us a perspective on that world. And then I ask him what's happened to the mob since then. There was a hit ordered on Frank Culotta, and that's why he ultimately cooperated with authorities. He'll tell you about that in our conversation. We talked to him in Las Vegas. We'll get to that in the second part of the show. Michael Shure stops through, and he will give us a perspective on the Supreme Court appointment. This nominee has a history, and this nominee also comes from a group that has a history and a strategy of judicial change in the years ahead. This is a shorter than normal show. I don't think the show even runs an hour, so enjoy this offering. We have one of the astronauts who went to the moon coming up in our next episode, and we've got some really cool stuff in the weeks ahead, so I'm looking forward to it. Our email address is edgewithmarkthompson@gmail.com. You can support this show by clicking on the Amazon link on our page if you're going to do any Amazon shopping. Our page is edge-show.com. So if you're listening on iTunes or Stitcher or any of the other platforms, go to our website, edge-show.com. Click anywhere it says Amazon. It'll take you through to Amazon. It'll be the same Amazon you normally get, but we'll get a slight piece of whatever you spend. I think it's like 0.5%, 0.5%. And that just helps us defray costs that are associated with keeping the show running. Some of you have used our virtual tip jar, which is also at our site, edge-show.com. There's a PayPal link. You can make a monthly contribution. You can make a one-time contribution. It's really a lovely thing. Those of you who've done it, I'm very, very grateful. It'll be Michael Shure and then a mobster. Let's get started.
This is The Edge.
The advantage, it means.
Hey, look, I just spit on me for no reason.
That's horrible.
Is there some comfort in uncertainty, do you think?
You're a degenerate.
Because Australian Shepherds need action.
Wow. Yeah. This is The Edge.
That's a self-loathing term that I use.
Oh, got it.
Time for the Fast 15, politics and more. He is our man who can sort it all out. He is Michael Shure.
Thank you. Hey. Thanks, everybody. Good to see everyone again.
Yes. We're here, I want to say, first of all, Michael, during a time that there is a shoot going on. There's a video shoot. There are interviews being shot, and there's a network crew shooting a different show than ours here in our Edge studios.
And so everybody here in our audience is getting to watch not just the podcast, but they're able to see television being made.
Right. And I would also add that there'll be background sound. That's kind of why I'm mentioning this, because you're going to hear background sound of one sort or another, and you might find it cool, or you'll find it annoying and irritating.
Just go with the former. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it, and it'll be...
we hope it'll add a fresh dynamic to the show.
Some grit. And if it works, if people are happy, we'll just get a crew in here every week.
Or we'll just get a background sound that we'll keep running in the background, which is probably more fitting our budget.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, the new Supreme Court appointment is the only news that we can talk about. You know, again, it's crowded out a lot of other stories I'd like to get to maybe for your future visits, but this really is a critical decision. It will shape culture in America and law in America for generations to come.
Unquestionably. Listen, going into it's Brett Kavanaugh, right? D.C. Circuit Court judge. Going into it, you knew who the four were. You knew actually a long time ago because he had a list of 20 or 25 judges around the country that he would put out, that he had put out, the president, to be his list of candidates for judgeships. He did that largely to court very conservative voters during the election, to let conservatives know that he was okay, that he wasn't going to be a slippery slope president on this. And that helped. That unquestionably helped him. So he went to that list, and we got Brett Kavanaugh.
You mentioned that list. That list comes from the Federalist Society.
Correct.
Tell everybody, the Federalist Society is
a very, very conservative think tank in Washington, made up of conservative thinkers, conservative people who have been publicly conservative in the past, and they dictate a lot of the way that U.S. conservative policy is carried out, and it dates back really in the public sphere to the Arkansas Project, to when they kind of made it their business to go after Bill Clinton. Now, it's not all nefarious what they do, but they're real conservatives, and there is room in the world for conservatives, and they have an agenda just like anybody would have an agenda. It's theirs. It just goes against those of the more progressive people. But I think the best way to put it is the people who are elected, Republicans who are elected, defer to the Heritage Foundation and Federalist Society in different ways than Democrats and progressives would defer to some of their more progressive think tanks.
I want to spend one more second on this because this is very important. We all know Donald Trump doesn't have a background in the law or even Washington politics or any of this stuff. He probably doesn't even have an abiding interest in any of these things, and that isn't, we can criticize Donald Trump for many, many things, but I'm not going to criticize him for that. He did completely turn the keys to this car over to Leonard Leo and this Federalist Society.
Correct.
That's where this list came from. Now, Leonard Leo is, as Michael has said, this dyed-in-the-wool conservative, religiously rooted conservatism in Leonard Leo. He was Donald Trump's right-hand man on this. So, this was the way it was packaged, and I'm bouncing this off of you. It was packaged that the Gorsuch pick was to send the message that, hey, we're going to be responsible with conservative appointments on the Supreme Court. Look, you can see, Justice Kennedy, that, we're not going rogue, and we're not going to let Donald Trump go rogue.
Right.
And then Kennedy steps aside to make room for this, and it's all part of an architecture that Leonard Leo and this Federalist Society has put in place over these many years.
Yeah, and that's right, and that's why they build this, and they build it for the courts. I mean, not just the Supreme Court, although that's the ultimate goal. They build it for the courts going, from the circuit courts to the appeals courts, all the way down. And I think they've been effective. I mean, they certainly have been effective. And as the Supreme Court has become a much more partisan place, they have really put their stamp on that.
And the culture wars that involve LGBTQ rights and abortion rights and the environment and the people having more personhood than corporate personhood has, all of these things, the cultural wars that are fought. The Federalist Society did something very smart. They realized we're not going to win these wars because the American people are swinging toward a more liberal viewpoint of the culture.
They've lost those culture wars, actually. It's not even we're not going to win. Those are lost. That's settled society.
But they felt we can win the legal challenges to these laws, and by doing that, we impose a legal structure that changes the culture.
Correct. And the Gorsuch ruling on the Colorado cake baker was the first example of that. How in the courts, while yes, gay people can marry and there are gay rights and sexual orientation can't be asked at different, in job interviews, and there has been progress on that level in the courts. That's the perfect example, Mark. They feel like they can still make their stand in those ways.
So these things that were the third rail, now they're not the third rail anymore. I'm talking about Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, I mean, we're riding on the third rail, really. I mean, there's no question. And I think what is untouchable has changed as well because, of course, not only does the court make rulings, they make decisions about what cases they're going to hear. And that's one thing that people forget about the importance of the Supreme Court is what actually comes before that court is decided by these justices too. So it's not just what their disposition is in ruling on it, it's the types of cases they take. And they are going to probably venture into parts that they have not ventured into in quite a while.
Leonard Leo is part of this Da Vinci Code group called the Knights of Malta, and they are a secret society, and they're their own country. They're like the Vatican, in the same way that the Vatican's its own country. And their roots are in Catholicism, so it's that same kind of doctrinaire Catholicism.
Yeah.
So he does function in this world that, and now this is just me, it seems a little enshrouded in mystery, and it's also enshrouded in strategy for what he wants, which is a court, in this case, back to daylight, dominated by right-wing thinking.
And not to mention, if confirmed, Kavanaugh will be the 6th Catholic member of the Supreme Court, and there are 3 Jewish members of the court. So to that end, too, it's been effective. You can't date it all the way back to that, but with the exception of really Gorsuch, who was born Catholic but raised as an Episcopalian, you have a predominantly Catholic court.
They talk about this firefight that's going to go on over this appointment and this confirmation.
Yeah.
But this confirmation process is a foregone conclusion, isn't it?
No, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. First of all, anything can happen. Well, right now, we're going to know more about Brett Kavanaugh in 2 weeks than we know today, and that could be from a college roommate to any kind of story that can come up about the guy. They've done due diligence on him to a huge degree, but things come out. And listen, I mean, he's going to fill the seat of Anthony Kennedy. Anthony Kennedy was the third choice for that seat, right? So there was Robert Bork, who didn't pass confirmation. Then there was Douglas Ginsburg, who had to withdraw because it turned out he had smoked marijuana. And then there was Anthony Kennedy. Things happen. You learn things about people. There's no question Douglas Ginsburg was vetted, but it turns out he smoked marijuana, which at that time was far more taboo, or it was taboo. Now I don't think that it would be so taboo. There's an understanding about it, even if people would reject, even if some would reject people who did that. But that's the thing. Right now we don't know, and there are Republicans who are potentially subject to changing their vote on this guy from what you would think, whether it's Ted Cruz, who has said in the past, when propping up Mike Lee, the senator from Utah, who he wanted to be the Supreme Court justice, he said that he doesn't think that he thinks that he's been a disappointment, Kavanaugh, for conservatives. So you have it from that wing of the party. Then you also have it from people like John McCain, who may just not want to give anything to this president or may not vote, to Jeff Flake and Bob Corker, who may just want to, who are retiring. This is a lot. I'm going through a lot of senators.
No, this
here.
is important because you're saying, look, they need all 51, and so any one of these guys could turn
and they need
side.
51 because Mitch McConnell changed the rules. You can blame it a little bit on Harry Reid, but he's the one who did it. And so it used to be you needed 60, and that's how you got centrist judges. Now you need 51. You don't get centrist judges anymore. And so the fact that it's those people, it's Heidi Heitkamp from North Dakota, who's a Democrat, who may vote for him, right? She's in a very tough election race. There's a school of thought that says if you're in a tough race, then go for the Democrat. Go for someone who's liberal. Don't support someone just because they're there. But the point is that she may not. Then on the other side again, the Republicans, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, who are, they voted for Gorsuch, but that doesn't mean they're going to vote for this guy.
So it's by no means clear that...
It's by no means clear. What is clear is the Democrats have nothing they can do other than try and peel away some Republicans and stick together. And for every Democrat who comes out and says they're supporting Kavanaugh, and that they're probably, I would say you're looking at 2 or 3, Joe Donnelly of Indiana, Heitkamp, like I mentioned, from North Dakota, maybe Joe Manchin from West Virginia, maybe a wild card, maybe Doug Jones in Alabama, maybe Claire McCaskill in Missouri, although I take that back. That's not going to happen. And so I think that that there's nothing they can do other than work some of their colleagues.
On this episode, we talked to an underboss in Las Vegas, and one of the things that he says is, you can send the guy I send to get you to jail, but there'll be another guy behind him, another guy behind him, and there'll be 10 more behind him. I feel a little bit about the Supreme Court in that same way.
Well, you should. I mean, that's really what it is. The end game here, though, is the midterm elections. Get through the summer, get into September, find a way to not have a hearing, which of course the Democrats can't control, but they can certainly delay, and then say, all right, we had the elections in the beginning of November. If the Democrats should win the Senate, that changes things. Listen, it's a 94-6, but until the 6 goes to sleep, I'm not saying in Senate numbers, I'm saying percentages, you keep fighting if you're the Democrats, and that's what they will do, and they will try and stick together. What about the Thai kids? That's pretty cool.
Hey, the Thai kids, and I actually was quite worried. The more of the complexities that I realized were associated with this, I started to think maybe not everybody's going to make it out. And then once the one Navy SEAL did die.
Yeah, the Thai Navy SEAL. And I have to say that I was watching it, I got like a physical reaction to what it would have been like to be there and have to work my way out. I mean, it's a claustrophobia, an unimaginable claustrophobia, dark and deep and tight, and it's such an impressive thing. It's a super feel-good story at a time when people need them. Although, there was a huge tragedy there, so that Navy SEAL dying during the rescue, that's a horrible thing.
Yeah, it was an international effort too, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah. And also, I think that, their technology's cool. I mean, what they did, pumping water out, and I mean, it's the whole thing is a marvel. But forgotten are the people that sit down and say, "Here's what we need to do." And they were right, and they did it, and they pumped 435,000 gallons an hour out, and then they made it so people could walk through parts of it, and they had to dive through parts of it. I mean,
yeah, you're right.
extraordinary.
There was Elon Musk had his sub that he was going to bring down there, and he also had a modified sub he was going to bring down. He had another plan. He had his boring company send down the digging tool to dig another hole that would then be encased in plastic so they could walk through, sort of like a bouncy house type setup.
Yeah.
But you're right. In the end, it was old school diving technique and then engineering to pump out the water. And then, this was the last thing, they didn't wait.
Right.
They pursued this more aggressively than it seemed as though the ramp-up was going to suggest.
They were saying that they're going to have to wait months because the monsoons are coming, the rains are coming, and
many were counseling that would be the most appropriate way to go. If you really want to make sure all these kids make it, you got to wait for months.
The issue was oxygen, apparently, and that's why that's what made it far more urgent. But also that they kept looking. You know, that's the amazing thing. They kept looking for these kids. So 12 days on, they find the British divers find them. It's like, what an unbelievable thing.
Yeah, they're a mile and a half from the entrance, all the way in. It was incredible. Well, Michael, I'm glad you made it by. Thank you for coming by. You know, I know you've been busy. If people want to see your stuff, you're on I-24 News, and your stuff is also on the I-24 website.
It is, i24news.tv, and there's some, I retweet some of the stories. I did some great, I'm not saying the stories were great, but they were interesting people with whom I spoke about the Supreme Court nomination, and I was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and talking to people there, the premise being you could close your eyes, point to anywhere on the map, and any Supreme Court ruling affects some people in every community, and that's what we did in Cedar Rapids.
Michael, we love you. I get emails every week from people who say you are their favorite part of the show.
Oh, stop.
Soon you'll be the only part of the show. Sorry, Josh. The truth hurts. Michael Shure, everybody.
Oh, God, you're all too kind. You're all too kind. Does Josh get the same kind of audience welcome?
No, he does not.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's all I need to know.
If you enjoy listening to The Edge, support them by subscribing to The Edge on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can listen through the iHeartRadio app. Get busy listening.
And now Frank Culotta from the notorious Chicago mafia outfit that then set up shop in Las Vegas.
You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson.
My name is Frank Culotta. I belong to the Chicago outfit, which is actually called, it was a syndicate, the mafia, whatever you want to call it. We call it the outfit.
And the outfit was here in Las Vegas in a very big way.
Yes, it was. It's been out here since probably the early 60s, the late 50s, the bosses. I came out in 72.
Give us a sense of what the town was like when you got here.
As far as I'm concerned, it was a lot better town. It was more open. It was more gracious to the people, more complimentary. It's corporate now, and it sucks as a corporate town.
But there was an underworld quality, right? Let's not deny that.
There's no denying it. It was strictly an underworld. Everybody knew everybody. The squares, the stiffs, they knew who we were. They tried to keep it quiet, but there's always a few rats running around that's going to give you up. You got basically anything you wanted in this town. We tried to be nice to everybody without being mean. Yeah, of course they feared us, but we prefer them to like us first and fear us only if they fucked up.
So in a way, you were politicking the town.
I guess you could put it that way. We were politicking the town. That's the way you got to do it. You got to know how to talk to people. You can't scare them off. You get more out of them. In other words, you get more with honey,
And when you say out of them, the them is
the people and the casino bosses. You didn't have to go in there and scare them. They knew who you were, and they would do whatever you wanted them to do.
So you have a piece of the gambling operations, you guys.
We had a piece of the skim. I didn't, but the organization I belonged to, the outfit, had a big piece of the skim. You take so much off the top in the casino. You're skimming the money. So in other words, it was done through the slot machines. That was my understanding. I didn't want to know, and I didn't care. Because the more you know, the more you're open to get whacked in the head. You got to put the finger on somebody,
So somehow you made it through all of this without getting whacked and without getting roughed up, right?
I don't know if it was because I was smart or just plain lucky. It probably was a little bit of both. And the only reason why I did roll and became a government witness, not an informant, there's a big difference, is because there was a contract out of my life. And how did I know that? Because I heard the tape. I heard Tony and Joe Lombardo. Tony Spilotro pushed the weight off on me like I was the guy that was out there robbing and killing and doing everything without an okay from Chicago. And then Joe Lombardo told him, he was the acting boss in Chicago at the time. He said, Tony, clean your dirty laundry. You don't have to be a genius to figure that out.
You consulted on the movie Casino. You were telling Martin Scorsese a lot of things related to the way the mob interacted in Vegas to give the film a greater reality.
I was first introduced to Martin Scorsese through Nicholas Pileggi. He did the screenwriting, the book, and all of that. And then I worked with Marty, and on the set I was a consultant, and I also acted in the movie. I used to sit right alongside of Martin Scorsese in a director chair. I didn't feel as though it was a big deal, to be honest with you. But everybody that came on the sets, and there were movie stars, they'd say, who's this guy? Who's that guy? They'd say it to other people. And a lot of people didn't want to give it up who I was. But like I said, I didn't think I was that important, but evidently I was.
What did you think of Robert De Niro?
You really want me to tell you? You really want me to tell you? He's a jagoff.
And why do you say that?
He should mind his own business. He forgot about the middle-class people. Even when I had $1 million, I still took care of my people. This guy don't understand all the money he's making are from middle-class people. All the money he's made. He wants to talk about politics? Leave it alone. It's none of his fucking business. Let people make their own choices.
No, I see you don't like what he's done recently, but how was he on the movie set?
He's an idiot. He's a three-liner. I don't care if the whole world could know it. I watched him. I work with him. It'd take 5 hours to do 15 words that he had written on his cuff or his hand. Don't laugh, it's true.
So I want to go back to what you were actually doing. You were getting fingered and potentially hit for a bunch of stuff you didn't do. That is to say, the killing and the...
No, that's things I really done.
You did really do.
Yeah, but I had the okay to do them. It's not that I done them on my own. I had enough brains to make sure that I was getting the okay from Chicago through Tony. But Tony was lying to me. He wasn't getting the okay.
Tony was the...
He was the acting boss out there. I was his underboss.
And what kind of thing would demand the kind of enforcement and the kind of thing that you would have to do?
Well, I know what you're saying. Just your mere presence, and then I know who you are, they would walk a straight line. All right? I used to run down to bookmakers, guys that were doing illegal bookmaking outside of the casinos, and I put the muscle on them for Tony. They didn't know it was for Tony, because then their bosses would go to Tony from New York, Cleveland, wherever they're from, and they'd say, Tony, could you help us out? Some guys are trying to muscle our bookmakers, or we'll cut you in for half. And Tony'd say, I'll take care of it. Then he'd tell us back off. And he'd get half of the action.
So it was just a way to go, hey, guys, if you want to stay in business, you're going to have to...
kick it in or get your fucking head broke.
Right.
Or lose it all.
Did anybody push back on you guys?
Not a one of them.
Yeah.
If you've seen the guys I sent to their door, you'd understand why.
And when you look back on all of that, you guys did have to bust some asses along the way.
Well, nothing was for nothing. Nothing's for nothing. The worst part about being connected or in the outfit, when you put money out on juice. You know what juice is, right? Somebody borrows $500 from you. We like to go a little higher, like $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. They got to pay 10% of that. In New York, they say VIG. We say juice in Chicago. And I tell a guy if he come up to me, these were doctors and lawyers.
Sure, who needed a loan
They
quickly.
they didn't want their old ladies to know, and they needed a loan quickly. And I tell them, listen, are you sure you're going to pay back? I don't want to hear no excuses the first week, because, you know, if you don't pay back, you know what could happen. Oh, I promise. They'd sell their wife. They'd tell you anything just to get that money. And sometimes 3 weeks later, a month later, they'd come up lame. You know, I got it. They'd come up with an excuse. I told you, no excuses. You may whack them around a little bit. You can't kill them, because if you kill them, you never get your money.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So you had to, or you tell them, I'm going to tell your wife. How do you like that one? Everybody's just scared of their wife. They got to live with her.
I'd rather get
They
roughed
got to
up
live with her, yeah.
than you tell my wife. Did you ever have to kill somebody?
Yes, a few times.
And what were the circumstances where that was necessary?
When we get an order to do something like that, you got to do it. If you don't do it, you're going to become the victim. They wouldn't come to you and tell you to do something. if they thought you weren't going to do it. They're only going to go to somebody that they know is capable and who will keep his mouth shut.
But do they tell you...
That why?
Yes, exactly
No.
why.
You
So
don't
you're
need to
telling me-
know.
So you're in charge of getting rid of a bunch of people, and you don't even know when you're in your spot why these people are
You don't
being rubbed
ask.
out.
You don't ask the question. You just know that it has to be a good reason. The boss wouldn't tell you to go just kill some guy because he was cheating on his wife was cheating on him or he was cheating on her.
What do you think? What do you suspect? What do you theorize were the reasons behind this?
They're usually rats, informants, or they were stealing a lot of money from bookmaking or whatever they were muscling, sent out to do for the outfit.
Was there anybody in your crew who was stealing from the crew?
Not in my crew. I had a very loyal body of guys around me.
But there were crews where that happened.
Yeah.
And you're
Happened
saying
in
that's
Chicago.
and the penalty for that you're saying is
They killed him.
Yeah.
They killed him. Butchie Petroselli. They killed him because he was robbing they had Greek card games and stuff, and they collect money. And I guess he was stealing out of that, and they killed him.
Was this world, this mobster world, in certain movies like Goodfellas and even in Casino, they romanticize it. There's almost a sexiness to it. How much of that is legit and how much of it was, hey, it was a scary, nasty place where we had to do business?
Is it all stars and glitter? Not really. You got a lot of pressure on you, besides from the police, the government, local, and your own people. You got a lot of pressure on you all the time. You got to make sure you're doing the right thing. You can't talk. I was a very quiet guy back in them days. I hardly ever talked because less said is better heard. That was my belief.
How did you end up being the top guy out here?
I didn't want to be. I resisted that in Chicago for many, many years. I told Tony I don't want to be a boss. I could have been a boss years and years ago. I had all the capabilities of being. I don't want to be it. I don't want to control a bunch of guys and worry about them and listen to the boss tell me what I could drive, what I could wear. I don't want to hear that shit. I wanted to be on my own. I give you 20%. But then Tony wanted me out, or Spilotro wanted me out here in Vegas. And I said, yeah. I give him the bullshit. Yeah. After 2 years, the yeah didn't go anymore. And then Joe Lombardo come up to me, and I had a big lounge discotheque. And he congratulated me, and I didn't know what he was talking about, and I shook his hand. I thought he was talking about the lounge. And he said, when are you leaving for Vegas? And I said, well, I guess I'm leaving next week. And that's when he said, you got to go out there and help Tony. And that's when I left for Vegas.
Are you still here?
I'm here now, and if I tell you I got to kill you, I can't tell you where I live.
Of all the depictions of the mob that we've seen in film, give me one of your favorites, or one that you felt, yeah, you know what, that's kind of like, or even The Sopranos. Like, where do you see the accuracy?
Well, I see the Sopranos. It's a good characterization about us guys. We hung in joints like that, not strip joints, but we hung in joints and we bullshitted and we played cards and stuff like that. A lot of it's exaggerated, of course. Like I told you before, you have to exaggerate to make a movie good. I seen that like in The Godfather. When they talk about the boss there, I see another guy that they refer to, but they used it as Bonanno. I looked at Paul Rica, because he's the same guy they tried to deport for 10 years and they couldn't get him in, deported. And that's what they did in the movie, The Godfather. So they copy a lot of shit. Same thing in Wise Guys. Everything you've seen in the movie Goodfellas or Wise Guys, that's me talking. Nick copied that stuff.
Was there anxiety? The one thing I think about when I think about being in a mob at a high level even is that you're always looking over your shoulder a little bit.
Yeah, constantly. Constantly looking over your shoulder. Constantly. You wake up because you know you got a tail. I got surveillance pictures of FBI and bank buildings watching us, taking pictures, trying to build up a RICO case. That's the way they build up a RICO case. Organized group of guys every day. I had pictures in my restaurant. They had cameras in my restaurant, in the roof, in the ceiling, looking down at us. We uncovered them. We used to catch them every time. They did something. Luck. Of course, we were alert. We watched. Driving in the car, we used to talk with our hands over our mouth like this because they used lip readers. Was it a tough life? Yeah. I worried about my family more than anything for them to arrest my family. They did take my stepdaughter and subpoena her to grand jury. What are you, goofy? A kid? What does she know? You think I sit down and talk to her? I didn't tell my wife what I did. You're not supposed to talk to your family and tell them your family stuff.
How did it all end and wind out for you?
How did it all end? In a witness protection program. And that only lasted 2 years. I couldn't stand it.
They moved you to where?
All over the place.
Really? They're moving you all the time?
Well, they settle you down somewhere.
Yeah.
But before they get you that one location, they bounce you from one city to another. And then I got out of it. I told them I can't handle it no more. They're good guys, the marshals. They can only do so much for you.
And so then you ended up just going, listen, I'll take my chances on my own.
On my own. 25 years later.
I know exactly. Why has it been 25 years and no issues?
Because I don't want to insult anybody. In other words, I could have came out a long time ago and went to Chicago and insulted a lot, which there weren't anybody left, but it would have been disrespecting people. I don't want to do that. I don't want to rub pie in your face. Now I could go back there. I go back there as me, and everybody that sees me loves me back there. You got to give them still respect. You know, that was there at the time. Now it's open field. You know what I mean?
The mob is not done, is the point.
Yes, it's done. Just not organized like it was.
Now it's like street hoods almost.
Almost. They're low profile. You don't know who's a rat and who's not, who's an informant now or who's not. That's the whole problem now. Telephones with the pictures. Guys can't wait to run in and tell on you.
Yeah.
You know, before you had, if you killed, how could I put it? Let me put it like this. If you threaten somebody, if you go to the cops and you put me in jail and you point a guy out, he's the next guy that's going to come and get you. And if you put him in jail, in back of him, there's 10 more guys. You're going to get you eventually. That was the premise the outfit had. And it worked. You think about it. It worked.
Frank, thanks. It's a
You're
pleasure
welcome.
to meet you.
You didn't leave nothing in my hand.
Worth the $5,000, right? Hang on.
Only playing with you.
He's a good guy.
All right, we met a real mobster and we talked Supreme Court. We'll do more Supreme Court talk as the weeks unfold. But I think for now, Daddy has done all he can. Thanks for joining us again. Our email address is edgewithmarkthompson@gmail.com. Appreciate all your support in the many ways that you show us love. Until next time, bye-bye.
I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on The Edge. And if you haven't already, why don't you show your support and subscribe? What's the matter with you? Go to Edge Show. Oh, shit, it's Edge Dash. What's with the dash? Stupid. All right, I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on The Edge. Show your support and leave something on their website, edge-show.com. Stupid. Why is there a dash?
Get more of The Edge on Stitcher and iTunes, or go to our website, edge-show.com.